Seiko is back. This feels just like the old days when they unceremoniously put out an amazing affordable watch. Nobody's talking about it. This came out, I think, at the end of 2025. Try to get the black dial variant. Unfortunately, disaster. I'll discuss that in the negatives, but this one did make it, and for the price of a MoonSwatch. Awesome. This feels like the old days. Remember the Saab 033? This JDM amazing timepiece? Seiko is still doing it. Let's roll the intro. Now, I'll do a very quick wristwatch check. Still honeymooning the Tudor there. Check out my unboxing if you missed it. Guys, if you want to check out a really great review of the black dial variant, watch Luca from the UK. Support independent, true enthusiast channels, guys. And hit like. It really does make a difference. Subscribe if you haven't. Let's start out with the history, shall we? According to Wikipedia, Seiko and Rolex are the only two watch companies considered to be completely vertically integrated. And I actually beg to differ, but regardless, the claim does give you an idea of the scope of their manufacturing. But one thing is indisputable, however. No other brand can offer as much proprietary made watches, tech, and heritage this affordably. And that is a fact. With Casio outsourcing a lot of their electronic components, Citizen is perhaps the only brand that comes close to this level of production capability for the money. But Seiko has, over its greatest domestic nemesis, a more profound world-changing history. Now don't get me wrong, Citizen are still amazing, but let's keep it 100%. Many, if not most fellow watch enthusiasts, forget that Seiko produced Japan's very first chronograph watch in 1964 with the Crown Chrono, and several decades before that, pocket watch chronographs in the early 1940s.
What you are about to see is not science fiction, it's Seiko Sport Tech. There's the world's first analog quartz chronograph.
But it wasn't until pioneering quartz, and thus bringing the whole watch world to its knees, that they began to become true innovators of the chronograph complication. For the sake of brevity, I will not repeat the rather epic story of how Seiko came to be one of the very first creators of the automatic chronograph with their speed timers and variants of the 6139 in 1969. But incidentally, it was the very same year they introduced quartz timekeeping to the world, then making history yet again in 1983 with the world's first quartz chronograph, the legendary and supremely effective 7A28, a not so distant ancestor of today's watch caliber, in for review. But let's also not forget that Seiko chronos have been worn by the likes of James Bond.
Oh, Commander Bond.
Call me James. It's 5 days to Alaska.
Officially issued to RAF pilots, in space with astronaut Colonel William Pogue, and then on the wrist of a flamethrower-wielding Ellen Ripley, while simultaneously being redesigned by the greatest car designer of all time, Giorgetto Giugiaro. So yeah, they did start a little late, but just like their dive watches, they came to dominate the chronograph genre. So let's start with the dimensions first, and it really is very mid-century period correct perfection, I have to say. Quite small lugs. In terms of materials, we have stainless steel, of course, an aluminium insert for the bezel, and then this box-shaped hardlex, which gives it quite dramatic distortions, again giving you that vintagey vibe. We'll discuss hardlex later. Spoilers for the negatives. So if I engage the chronograph there, you see we got 1/5 of a second tick. It is a mecha quartz. This is the 8T63, which superseded the 6T63, both cousins of the 7T62, which of course we all know from the mighty Flighty. However, unlike the Flighty, they've sacrificed the alarm and the dual time zones and gone for the 24-hour dial there. We have a 60-minute register. It's introduced around 2015, I believe. Some people actually erroneously say it's a flyback, but it's not. It's a kind of flyback reset, if that makes sense. So you don't have to start, you just put it back to 0. If it was a flyback, it would start again. It would reset and start again. We get a little date tucked away, not that noticeable actually, which is pretty nice. It's a 3-year battery life, although I can personally attest Seiko tends to understate the battery life. I get about 4 years out of my Flighty. It's about plus or minus 15 a month in terms of accuracy. What's interesting about this piece is they've actually stated, for the first time I've ever seen it on the Seiko website, it's ISO 764 classified, which basically means magnetic resistant to the international standard, which is about 4,800 amperes per meter. But don't get too excited. For reference, the Rolex Milgauss is about 80,000 amperes per meter, which corresponds to a magnetic flux of about 1,000 Gauss, hence Milgauss. That has a Faraday cage and all the rest of it. This is just more basically good for everyday things like laptops, speakers, hard drives, microwaves, what else? The kind of electric motors you find in blenders, vacuums, even knife racks, door latches, that kind of stuff. So for every day, it's pretty good. Now, in terms of the luminescence, we got Lumibright on the hands and the indices. Fantastic orientation because of that double marker at the 12, so you always know which way up it is. And considering its rather diminutive size, it's fairly effective, I have to say. In terms of the bracelet, we are just like a real Seiko. It's jingly jangly as hell. It's a 5-link with high polished in the middle and then brushed on the sides, pinned links, a stamped clasp, which is really, I mean, look at this thing. It's the smallest clasp I've ever seen. It has just 1 micro adjustment. But as we're talking over the finishing, I got to say, in comparison to older chronographs, quartz chronographs that is, the finishing is really impressive. The transitions, the actual high polish and the satin finish is done marvelously well. In terms of how it wears, it very much reminds me of the Speedy Reduced, incidentally. So for my wrist, absolute perfection. Design-wise, this unequivocally idiomatically takes from other brands' iconic watches over Seiko's own legacy of record-breaking chronos. Now, is this inspiration to its detriment or for the better? Well, you can decide in the comments. But what it does suggest, however, is the intention to appeal to a more mainstream audience that perhaps is in the market for an affordable alternative to a Speedy or Daytona rather than a Seiko icon, which, let's be honest, only true enthusiasts tend to know about. And even if we are in a far more advanced and aware online watch world, these will most likely be on display in malls and brick-and-mortar stores where passers-by might not necessarily know a Newman Daytona from a MoonSwatch, but they do want that look. So let's break down the aesthetic evidence that supports this. The 1964 Crown chronograph was Japan's first ever chronograph watch. There's absolutely nothing here aside from the branding that links it to that design. But squint your eyes and you quickly see the resemblance to the progenitors of a current Speedy or Daytona instead. The bezel is unashamedly Speedmaster, not just in look, but it even has the same word tachymeter with a similar dash and dot combination in the layout. Vintage Daytonas had units per hour near the crown, so while it certainly has some Paul Newman vibes elsewhere, along with the piston head style pushers like a classic Speedy, it's clearly leaning more towards the moon going icon on the outside. However, under the glass, it's a different matter entirely, counterbalanced, forgive the rubbish watch pun there, by a far more Daytona-esque dial configuration, with applied markers, reverse panda contrasted polar white subdials, and a metallic index handset. The closest mechanical Seiko ever came to this V-shaped layout was with the vintage 70s bullheads. They had a bi-compax layout with an equidistant date-day complication at the 6. It wasn't until the 80s when Seiko introduced the groundbreaking 7A28 with a triple register. So design-wise, we are clearly more in Swiss homage territory, for better or worse. And I wonder if some clever watch nerd is going to come up with a whimsical nickname for this Seikoholic master, perhaps? No, that's kind of lame. Anyway, suggestions in the comments. The biggest negative for me is that it's nowhere near as great as the 7062 movement. This was notoriously favored because it was apparently a pleasure to service, very easy to replace parts, great complications for the user. I've never been a fan really of this particular caliber. I've had it in micro brands, which is basically the unbranded version. It's the VK something or other. I never understood the point of 12-hour display. For me, it's completely useless. If you guys have a use for it, do let me know in the comments. It's not independently adjustable, so you can't set it to a second time zone. That would have been really useful. Now, in terms of water resistance, it's 50 meters, which is to be expected. None of these pushers or crown screw down, unlike the ridiculous 200 meters of the Flighty, which is everything is screw down. Yeah, the Flighty was a real treasure. Yeah, that's why it's still here all these years later. The next big negative is going to be the limited availability. You can only order from the Far East. I was forced to buy this from a grey market dealer in New York, which I really do not recommend. I'm not going to name them. It's a long story, I've already explained. I'm not a fan of the grey market, despite however many times people trying to legitimize that phrase. And I did actually order a black dial version, which almost like kind of faux lacquer, refulgent, really interesting dial, and I ordered it from overseas. With the tariffs, God knows what's happened to it. It's got lost in the post. Real pain. I wanted both of them here for the actual review. Now, two missed opportunities. Firstly, with the bezel, I would have loved if they used the Pogue insert. It was so distinctly Seiko. You know, it still gives you that Daytona speedy look, but just with a little clever nods to Seiko, right? Or elements from the 1964 crown. I loved the hash marks or the tracks on the outside of that watch, were just so cool. Now, this blue, I absolutely adore it. I would describe it as a kind of restrained matted affair, Stratos blue, I think they call it. There is a green version, which is this kind of sunburst green with rose gilt. It sounds absolutely ghastly, but it's kind of cool. This is the second kind of trick they missed here, of not doing a polar white with the inverted blue subdials. They could have done a Snoopy on the budget and driven watch enthusiasts absolutely Lady Gaga. Deep cut to the last video. And then, of course, we have to talk about that hard legs. Yeah, feels like 10 years ago. People are always going to complain about the hard legs. Why not you put sapphire in there? Oh, I can get such and such off AliExpress with the sapphire, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, go for it. And then get ripped off. I would never buy from AliExpress. But anyway, Hardlex is their own proprietary crystal. It's a hardened mineral, but it's quite significantly stronger. If you imagine mineral crystal is about 5 to 6 on the hardness scale. Hardlex is a little bit above 7, and then sapphire at 9. So it's comfortable in between, but you have the advantage where sapphire is very brittle. You drop sapphire glass, it can shatter. I've actually dropped my dear old Flighty multiple times, very minor scratches, and it didn't shatter. And let's be honest, if you have an accident wearing a watch with sapphire crystal, you know, facciamo la corna, God forbid, the impact is going to be so great, you're probably going to lose an arm, you know, or break your arm. So who cares about the crystal on your watch at that point? It's just this kind of box ticking obsession that watch enthusiasts have that they need to get over. Life is too short. Just enjoy it for what it is. And then, of course, the last negative is that bracelet. It's an afterthought. Let's be honest. You're buying it to put on straps. I've got some wonderful straps here. I picked out 2, which I think the color corresponds with nicely. Collar ebbs, incidentally, got the distressed. I forget if this is the Venezia or the Firenze or the Siena, whatever it is. I'll leave a link for these from Holben's, obviously. And yeah, I think it plays with the blue quite nicely. You could go with this ostrich blue and that lovely cognac definitely goes. They put drilled spring bar holes as if to kind of suggest you know what you're going to be doing with this, and I'm going to use the Urban Gentry trademark phrase, an absolute strap monster, and definitely the black even more so. This mashup of sedulously selected 60s styling, mid-century scale, 80s and 90s quartz tech affordability, but contemporary watch market awareness is very much a welcomed change to the ever-scaling upwards aspirations of a modern Seiko that has caused a bit of a lack of faith with the OGs to this hobby, and that's original Gentry for you newcomers. This feels like it's from the heyday of overlooked domestic Japanese gems like the Saab 033, aka the Baby Grand Seiko, the mighty Flighty of course, and even the first generation Green Alpinist. All from a time before the over-corporatized, journalistically compromised so-called watch publications jumped on to the trend to cash in, along with the industry plants getting in on the action, only to ruin watch content on unsocial media with their hype-inducing fake reviews, and then cheapening it further with their branded collaborations, while all the time perfidiously masquerading as enthusiasts when they're simply fronts for their own watch stores.
I don't. I really just feel like they're overrated.
Okay.
Yes, I'm bitter about it if you haven't guessed, and I'm bitter because Seiko means so much to me, and many of you out there.
No, do not look at them. Do not look at them. Don't
Tell
do
us
it.
how you really
Okay,
feel.
you know what? I'll tell you how I really feel.
This does feel like the old days, a quirky but fun and ultimately capable watch. From a time when owning a piece that had such immense heritage for this little money was normal, and reminds me of everything that I love about Seiko. It felt like a kind of secret handshake amongst true watch fans, a sort of horological hack, something special that we could all share and love, and also most importantly, help get new people into the hobby. So why has Seiko gone back to the old ways, shall we say? They are notoriously surreptitious, and we can only speculate. But most likely, considering the price point, I feel it's a stainless steel middle finger up to the plastic MoonSwatch. The other part of me also suspects that when they shifted focus to going ever more upmarket, by moving their tool watches under the Prospects banner and then reinvigorating the Seiko 5 line into a hipsterfied starter pack, it inadvertently created a gap in the market. A void quickly filled by many micro brands offering interesting and often superior spec-cooled stuff, but also more nefariously it opened the floodgates to endless zombie-like hordes of soulless clomages from AliExpress scam brands, not to mention unscrupulous influencers who shilled them via affiliate schemes online. Whatever the motive, regardless, it feels great to recommend an affordable Seiko, the price of a MoonSwatch, at the beginning of 2026 no less. And it's like the old days. When it came to modern horology, it was Seiko's world and the rest of the brands just lived in it. I'm excited. Guys, let me know what you think down below in the comments. I'll catch you in the next one. Onwards and upwards. Thank you for watching. Ciao.
Tell me an opinion that you have about something. Anything at all.
They're back, baby. They are back.